a simple lifestyle change, like a cold shower, could have profound effects on both physical well-being. The body's ability and the mind's ability to adapt, be creative, to really react to the stress that is put on it, is super capable. And it's just about giving it the right environment to be able to do that. Being able to retrain the body and how to breathe right, for me personally, complete game changer. There's nothing that I now feel isn't within my realm or my comfort zone when it comes to stress and what I can deal with. What happens when you enter 15-degree water or below is that one of the chemical responses from your body is a 250% increase in dopamine levels. I want to become a coach in the Wim Hof Method because it has literally changed my life.
Ravi lives two lives at once. He's a full-time corporate finance professional. He spent the vast majority of his career so far in corporate investment banking across London and New York, and he's currently working for Apollo Global in their high-grade capital solutions team, providing long-term strategic investment capital to large global corporations. But he's also a life and performance coach. He helps corporate professionals, I'm guessing much like himself, achieve full potential, manage stress, and achieve growth, sustainable growth, both in personal and career lives. Ravi is a certified Mind Valley coach and trained as a Wim Hof Method instructor, which is quite a resume. Ravi, how are you doing both of these things at the same time?
Thank you for having me on. Really grateful to be here with you. It's a question I get asked a lot, and the crux of it is the Wim Hof Method, for me, in terms of the breathwork, the cold exposure, and the mindset applicability, which we'll get into a little bit later, has really helped me to enhance my mood, my daily life energy, my limiting beliefs and reconditioning of where I wanted to push my life. And it's given me, I guess, an up-leveling and an upskilling in the way that I'm going about my every single day. And it's not that it isn't a challenge at times. And this idea of finding work-life balance, spinning all the plates at once, it doesn't come easy, but having the right tools, which I'm hoping that folks will experience today with us, has been super transformative for me in terms of being able to build my capacity whilst also enhancing my capability across the daily work life and then some of the things I'm super passionate about as well.
So it's basically a competitive advantage rather than competing priorities.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice way to think about it, and it's a competitive advantage that everybody should have access to. Now, the biggest applicability with all of this comes down to mindset. Obviously, where you're at in your trajectory in terms of your pre-existing beliefs, maybe how present you are to change, and also where you want to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, particularly doing things like ice baths, cold showers, maybe meeting up with new people, putting yourself in challenging positions, just tends to expand that consciousness and that mind approach. And that's what's really been driving that competitive edge for me on a daily basis.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you already dropped a few things here. So a lot of people listening to this will be just like me. They're software engineers. They're always interested in improving their workflow and improving themselves. And they're curious people who want to hack things. And they probably have heard of Wim Hof in some context, probably someone doing ice baths and claiming that this is improving their lives and making them better at everything. But if you were to describe to us in 2 sentences, what is Wim Hof Method really?
There's a lot of, as you say, press and media coverage around cold, around breathwork, around Wim Hof himself. But Wim Hof Method, if I have to sum it up, is a natural path to a more optimal state of mind and body. If you unpack that slightly, what it means is it's about igniting the inner existing power that is within us all and aligning it to be in the most present moment so you can start to push your body, your physiology, your neurology, and your biochemistry, not even to new levels, but actually to pre-existing levels that would have been with us at birth. If you think about the time we were born up until now, and let's say some of the folks listening are in their mid-30s or early 40s, there's probably been a rhetoric around temperature and cold. So being raised, particularly in the UK, for example, I was always told, if you go outside, make sure you wrap up, because otherwise you'll catch a cold. So what we'd argue with the Wim Hof Method is that over time, because we've had such beautiful technological industrialization change, we've also become less susceptible to stress, in the sense that you, me, and all our listeners here today could go the whole day without actually experiencing the real temperatures outside. In your home, or where I'm at right now, maybe the AC's on or the heating's on, it's a certain temperature. Maybe you're commuting to work and traveling in the trains or the taxis, certain temperature. You're wearing X amount of clothing. When you get in the office, if you're an office worker, again, certain temperature. If you think about that on a daily basis over the last 30, 40 years of your life, your body's innate receptors that are there to challenge the body in terms of changing to certain temperatures in particular start to go more and more numb. And that's why you hear a lot of people say, I hate the cold isn't for me, I have bad experiences with the cold, I have poor blood circulation in my hands and feet, they're always cold. That's really your body's stress response not being triggered in the right way, which is a natural way within us all. And the Wim Hof Method is about acutely stressing the body, i.e. giving it the right dosage of stress, so that those innate receptors become alive again and they start to be challenged and they start to be responded to. So it's about bringing us back to where we were originally at birth. So resetting our systems. And specifically, we're talking about the central nervous system, the immune system, and the hormonal system, which we can get into as well.
So I think for anybody coming from the science background, the first thing they're going to do is push back a little bit and say, okay, whoa, that sounds cool, but I've also seen Liver King who was claiming that he was only living on raw meat and eating liver. What's the science backing all of this?
It's a great question and something that we should really focus on. There are a ton of studies out there, particularly on the Wim Hof Method, but then also on cold and breath. And just to reset a little bit, just for the folks who aren't as familiar, the three key pillars of the Wim Hof Method are cold exposure, breathwork, and it's underpinned by a committed mindset, because these things are difficult to do. Maybe I'll just focus on a couple of studies that are out there and what they're focused on, and what maybe we can leave these in the links as well if people want to research the papers themselves a little bit more. The first one I'd mentioned is a study from 2014, and it's about the voluntary activation of the central nervous system. And so this study showed how using controlled breathing techniques can help you voluntarily activate your sympathetic nervous system. So you guys may have heard of the fight or flight mode or the rest and digest. This is the nervous system state that we tend to flip-flop in and out of at any moment in time. It showed that you can improve your resilience against stress, daily life stress, and even enhance your immune responses. So this was over 10 years ago, but it was the start of an insight, an opening of new doors for managing stress, improving mental health, and also potentially at the time with inflammation-related conditions. And inflammation can lead to a lot of the autoimmune conditions that we see today. So that study was really about learning to tap into the body's hidden potential, and that was back in 2014.
Was that the study when they injected them with some kind of deactivated virus and they were trying to see if there's any difference in how they respond to that for those who do the method and who don't?
Yes, exactly. So there was an injection of E. coli, a dead bacteria, into a test group who had been practicing the breathing techniques of the Wim Hof Method. And then the same E. coli was injected into the folks that hadn't. And what was very clear is that the folks who hadn't went quickly into fever and were basically in bedbound for the day, whereas the folks in the test group who had been practicing the consistent breathing techniques really only showed up with a very mild headache or very light symptoms. To your point, learning to tap into the body's potential and boosting the immune response, all through the amount of oxygen we're getting into the body and the amount of carbon dioxide that's being released. And that was done at a university in the Netherlands with Wim Hof. And then another one worth mentioning, I think, is something that's probably applicable to a lot of people who have tried the cold or maybe want to, and that is cold showers, which most of us usually have access to in our homes. And there was a study done in 2016. It was called Cold Showers, the Surprising Health Benefits. And again, we can link this in the source, but essentially what it was saying is that cold showers do a lot more than just wake you up. And the study showed that regular cold exposure with a test group led to increased energy, improved improved blood circulation, and even a boost to the immune system through the white blood cell count. So this was highlighting that a simple lifestyle change, like a cold shower, could have profound effects on both physical and mental well-being, turning that discomfort, if you like, into a pathway to health. And maybe the final one worth mentioning, because I want to overload people with the science, was the effects of hyperventilation on hormones. And this was done way back in 2001. And hyperventilation is essentially a controlled way of breathing faster and deeper into the body. And that study highlighted the physiological effects of hyperventilation and what that did to glucose levels, insulin levels, and stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, and the effects that hyperventilation had also on freeing fatty acids, which can lead to quite dramatic hormonal shifts.
I think from my perspective, this is really what makes a massive difference, because if you go on the internet, it's wild. You're going to find somebody who says basically anything that you can imagine. And also specifically Wim Hof, and I'm going to ask you how that was meeting the guy. The first impressions I had of him were a little bit woo, let's be honest here. Like the way he describes all of that and his journey of I went to a lake and I understood the lake and all of that. Might be a little bit of Putin for anybody coming, from the engineering background. But the fact that we have recent studies, they seem reasonably well designed, sounds pretty unique in that respect. So I'm very happy that you brought this up, and we'll link the studies in the description. I think I also remember a TED talk he gave where they basically put him in like a transparent box and they filled it with ice. And they basically said normal person would probably just die now, but this guy somehow manages to thermoregulate. I guess this is more of a stand, but it's also interesting one, right? Have you watched this one? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, no, I have. And that was actually done in New York, Times Square, of all places. And it's an interesting comment you make with how maybe he can come across and obviously which types of audiences he resonates with. I think if you just take a step back to his origins, he is basically an extreme athlete, and that's how he got famous, so back in Holland. And he got his nickname, the Iceman, because he broke a number of records relating to cold exposure. So one that you just mentioned was at the time the world's longest ice bath, essentially, or prolonged cold exposure. It was almost 2 hours, to your point, where he essentially used the mindset to thermoregulate the body. What else he did was also he climbed Mount Kilimanjaro just in his shorts in one of the quickest times ever set. He also took a test group up with him, 8 or 9 of which had underlying autoimmune conditions. And again, they climbed it in one of the quickest times possible, basically without acclimatization. And they used the breathing technique that we're going to maybe test a little bit out later to help them re-regulate their body. And he's also run the world's coldest half marathon above the Arctic Circle barefoot. So he's basically been using cold as his hard nature teacher, if you like. And the extensive training, these are obviously things that have made him famous, but I guess the crux of it is that the extensive trainings have helped him learn how to control the breathing, control the heart rate, control blood circulation, which helps him withstand these types of temperatures. So I think having gone through that as an individual, and he's been really one of the key catalysts to bringing cold exposure and breath into the mainstream now, again, science-backed. There's obviously a deeper spiritual element to a lot of this as well from a soul perspective, because I think one of his most famous quotes is, "I'm not afraid of death. I'm actually afraid not to have lived fully." And so I can understand where maybe you say, look, some of it's a bit more woo-woo, it's a bit more spiritual. But I'd also argue, and I have this mantra every time that I go in an ice bath, is that my ego and what I think I can do has to die, because that cold is going to teach me something. It's usually a mirror of what is going on inside. And that's something that you can then tap into and use into your mindset on a daily basis. So I totally agree with you. And also when I first met him, I trained with him in Poland at the Wim Hof Academy out there in Mount Śnieżka near the Czech border. And I first thought, you know what? He's a big, energetic, Viking type man, full of masculine energy. But the real depth within him is actually being love-centered, self-compassionate, and as I said, not being ego-led, which is what the cold can really teach you.
Yeah. So I think at this stage, I'm fairly convinced that at the very minimum, it works for him. All these records are pretty impressive. By the way, don't try it at home. This is not medical advice for our US-based customers. But the big question then becomes, is it something specific about this particular individual that makes him more immune to that, gives him better handle of his own body than an average person? Or is it really something that everybody can learn?
If I talk about my own experience and my own journey, I'm just a quote unquote ordinary guy, born and raised in London, who found the Wim Hof Method when he was 30 years old. So this was 5 years ago. And I can talk to the profound shifts that I found. If I just start off with what I did, I started off with cold showers and the breathing technique. And I had the same thinking, which was Wim Hof is this extreme athlete. He's probably got some crazy physiological advances and changes, and this is something that I can't do. What I quickly found was that the body's ability and the mind's ability to adapt, to be creative, to really react to the stress that's put on it is super capable. And it's just about giving it the right environment to be able to do that. I've then taken a lot of friends and family through this journey of controlled breathwork, of consistent cold exposure, and also people who come to my retreats and workshops and my one-on-one coaching that I also do. And what I've seen more broadly, and the uptake is obviously at different levels depending on where you're at, but I think the profound changes that can happen, particularly with one's biochemistry, is there to be seen. And don't get me wrong, I'm not doing 2-hour ice baths. I'm not promoting that by any means. I'm usually doing 2 to 5 minutes in an ice bath, maybe a couple of minute cold shower. I'm also grabbing the sauna and the heat, exercising, diet, all these things are important. But what I would say is the applicability really comes more down to stress management, i.e. how do you deal with daily life stress better, that everybody who's listening to this podcast is being hit with either through work life, through friends, through family, through an annoying boss, or maybe a project they're not into. You're being met with all this type of stress, and it's how you've adapted your nervous system to be able to flip-flop so that you can experience life in the best possible way. The other piece is most of us, and I'm generalizing here, but I think 70 to 80% of us just simply don't breathe the right way. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but breathing is the fundamental physiological Maslow's hierarchy of needs type initial block that we all need that can lead to growth and transformation, extended capacity, more stress management. And unfortunately, we've never really been taught about it. So being able to retrain the body and how to breathe right, for me personally, complete game changer. There's nothing that I now feel isn't within my realm or my comfort zone when it comes to stress and what I can deal with. And it's helped me profoundly with my confidence, where I want to take my life, how I interact with people, how comfortable I am in my own skin, and really being able to promote that comfort zone pushing behavior. So what I'd say is, I think looking at extreme athletes, and there are obviously celebrities that do this and spend a lot of money on it. And the real crux of it is, though, how you approach it. I approached it from a pain point of mine, which was heartbreak at the time and not really knowing myself. And I needed something to catalyze that within me. For a lot of my clients and people I work with, they're either seeking massive growth and change. They may be seeking certain goals. They maybe want to break out of repeating patterns. They maybe want to build resilience. Whatever it is, the breath and cold are a really great natural way to be able to tap into your innate power to do that.
So I'm going to question you and go a little bit deeper on all the 3 pillars that you described, the cold and hot exposure, the breathing, and the mindset. And I'm thinking probably the best place to start will be breathing. You just described that as a massive breakthrough, a game changer for you. Do you think I can ask you to show, not tell, and maybe guide us through a demo of how to do that?
I'd absolutely love to. Yeah, I think that's a great idea and something that the audience can do with us live. And I'm a big fan of feeling is understanding. Maybe I can explain what the specific Wim Hof method breathing is, and we can do a round of it.
Okay. You need like a safe space, or can they do that on the run as well?
Yeah, disclaimer-wise, I would say for folks who are listening, I would try and be sat down or lying down if possible. If you're driving, I certainly would not be promoting doing this while driving or operating any heavy machinery. And I would just caution as well, if you've had any recent cardiovascular issues or epileptic or are pregnant, I would also avoid this, what we're going to try right now. But if you can be in a comfortable position, assuming you are, you want to be sat upright, just comfortable, having the shoulders and the hands relaxed. And when we start, we can also close over the eyes. But I'll explain to you what the 3 base blocks are of the breathing exercise, and then we can jump right into it. So there are 3 phases. 1, which is what we call controlled hyperventilation. And what we're going to do here, we're going to simply be breathing in through our nose and exhaling through our mouth. And a really nice pointer for this is if you want to put one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly. And what we're going to really try and promote is on our inhale, so in through the nose, can we start to move our bottom hand more, i.e. get a deeper diaphragmatic belly breath into the body versus the top hand moving more. So if we breathe in, and we can try a couple together, breathing in through the nose, can we push out the bottom hand so that the belly expands almost towards the front, and then exhaling through the mouth, just gently relaxing the body. That may feel a touch unnatural. Most people tend to breathe what we call shallow, so where the top hand is moving more. We'll just try and promote that slowly over time, where the bottom hand is moving a little bit more. We're going to do 30 of those breaths. So we're going to circular breath. We're going to go in through the nose and then out through the mouth. When we finish that one breath, we're going to go in through the nose again and out through the mouth. And I'll count you guys with the length of that time.
But that's not what you expected to be doing during this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So once we've done that, as you can appreciate, that's going to be getting a lot of oxygen in the body, and we're getting rid of a lot of carbon dioxide. On my cue, on our final exhale, so it'll be our last 30th exhale through the mouth, we will hold the breath. So we will stop the breathing, okay? And just sit and relax without taking a further breath. Your body will be full of oxygen. This is where a bit of trust element comes into the body knowing exactly what to do. We're going to then hold our breath for a certain period of time together. And then on my count, we're going to take one final inhale in through the nose. We're going to hold that breath at the top just for a few seconds. And then we're going to release through the mouth. And that'll be one round of the Wim Hof Method breathing exercise. Some expectations you can expect: maybe a little bit of lightheadedness, maybe a bit of tingling in the hands and feet, maybe a slight change in body temperature. All of these physiological changes are super safe, super temporary. It is just that we're getting a lot more oxygen in the body than we used to. If you guys are ready, we can just take that upright position in our seats, or if you're lying down, just relaxing. I'm going to ask you to close over the eyes, just gently. If you want to bring your gaze as your eyes are closed in between your eyebrows, that's perfectly fine as well. And again, just put that one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly, and in a few seconds, we're just going to invite a nice deep breath in. I'll count you down in 3, 2, 1. Inhaling in through the nose, letting it go through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Beautiful. Keep that going. In through the nose. When you reach the top, letting it go. Just finding that circular rhythm. In again. Letting it go. Beautiful. Find that flow. In. Use me as a guide. Let it go. A little bit of pace to this. In. Letting it go. The next one, can we get a little bit deeper? In, through the nose, out through the mouth. Beautiful. Fully in. When you reach the top, letting it go. When we reach the bottom, breath again. In, start that cycle. There we go. Nice. Let it go. Doing really well, guys. Fully in. Let it go. A few more like this. In through the nose as much as we can. Let it go gently. In. Almost there. Letting it go. Just focusing on the breath with me. In. And out. Starting to oxidize the body. Fully in. Letting it go. Trying to promote that deep belly breath on the inhales. Letting it go. 10 more like this. Fully in. Give it your best. Let it go. Fully in. Let it go. Find that rhythm. Fully in. Letting it go. Last 5. In through the nose, much as we can. Let it go. Last 4. In. Let it go. Last 3. Let's go as deep as we can. Fully in. Letting it go. Let's go a little bit longer on these last 2. Fully in. Much as you can. Let it go. Final breath. Let's go in. And on this next exhale, let it go. Let it go. Let it go. And hold the breath. Stop the breathing. Close the mouth. Relax the shoulders. Be in a state of peace and calm. Focus in on the heart rate. Gently lower it again. This is the very first pillar. Trusting the process. Trusting your bodies. Trusting that the breath has got you. Doing really well. Just a few more seconds. You've got this. And in 5, 4, 3, 2. Let's take a nice inhale in through the nose. Really fill it up to the top and hold. Now if you want, you can squeeze gently the pelvis, squeeze the lung muscles, squeeze the stomach muscles. Just creates a bit of pressure to the head. It's all good. And in 3, 2, 1, let it go through the mouth. Let it go. Sit and enjoy this moment for a second. If there are any physical sensations, just noting them. If there aren't, no worries. Maybe just taking stock of the present right now. Just you and your bodies. To come back, start maybe gently moving the fingers, rubbing the hands if it makes sense. Just bringing a little bit of movement back into the body, and then when you're ready, opening up the eyes, slowly blinking it through, coming back, feeling refreshed, recharged, refocused for the rest of the podcast. Welcome back, Miko.
That is a weird feeling. I think, like you
What
said,
did you experience?
using the diaphragm for breathing is not something I do very much because that felt weird. And then the next thing that was weird was that when I exhaled at the end, it was a while before I felt like I needed to take a breath in. I didn't expect that to happen. And yeah, now I feel relaxed. I feel zen.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, and that's a great cocktail to take into your day. We just did one round there. I usually repeat that 3 to 4 times. Again, maybe in the link we can leave a 10 to 12 minute pre-recorded voice session that folks can take away if they'd like to practice this on their own. For 10 minutes doing that and then being in the Zen state, that's the stress management change that I talked about. I almost created a bubble around me where I was just feeling less anxious, more at ease, a little bit more calm. And I really like the point you made around the ease of the breath hold, because typically when we hold our breath or are asked to, we breathe in and we hold. The key to be able to hold your breath which, by the way, we held our breath there for 58 seconds, is expelling more carbon dioxide versus getting in oxygen. The brainstem, the deepest part of the brain, is only triggered to breathe when we breathe and take a breath in, because carbon dioxide levels are getting too high in the body. And so we need more oxygen to be able to balance them out. So the more carbon dioxide that you actually expel with every exhale, the lower that level is. So the longer it takes for those carbon dioxide levels to rise and for your brainstem to be triggered to say, hey, to keep me alive, let's breathe, which is why you feel the ease of that breath hold.
So your body doesn't actually know how much oxygen it has. It just goes by the level of CO2 in your body, basically.
Correct. Carbon dioxide is acidic. Having too much in it will poison you, essentially. And that's the regulator versus, yes, you're right, the amount of oxygen that you get into the body, which is usually capped at a finite supply.
Would you start with this every day? Is that something that you need to chain with the cold exposure, or are these elements kind of disjoint and you can place them within your day as you please? How does that work?
These things can be mutually exclusive or can come together, be separate, use them at any points of the day. What I found that works best is the combo, as you can appreciate, because these two natural elements go hand in hand. But what I do typically, and what I've done for the last 5 years, is that part of my morning routine, 5 to 10 minutes of it will be breath work. So it'll be essentially the type of breathing we just did now. And depending on how much time I have, how much energy I have, what I'm feeling, every day is slightly different. But on average, 5 to 10, maybe 10 to 15 minutes is on the breath work. And that's what I start my day with, because to your point and what you've experienced right now, that's what I want to take forward, is also a big re-regulator for the hormonal system, bringing cortisol level down, your stress hormone, quite quickly, which is super important for the rest of your day. And then typically after the breathing, because I'm in this more Zen state, as you nicely put it, I will then go in cold expose. And that might be an ice bath, that might be a cold shower, that might be the sauna and the cold as well. Separately, I use this breath work, maybe 1 or 2 rounds of it, or maybe other types of breath work, which we can talk about slightly later, in parts of my daily life. So before I'm getting on stage, before I have to present to an investment committee, before I have to have a challenging conversation, I may do 1 round of this breathing to just help me re-regulate where I'm at that moment and bring my nervous system into a more balanced state where I need it. So really beautiful way that you can capture at any point of time. The breath work we just did with 1 round took about 3 or 4 minutes. And you can obviously do a more condensed version as well if that helps and you just don't have as much time. So really nice hacks through your day. I typically start my day with cold. If you are doing cold exposure later in the day, it can be very beneficial actually if you struggle from poor sleep or you can't get to sleep because of overactive mind. Typically what it is hormonal imbalance, and the cold again can re-regulate your hormonal system that allows your melatonin, the sleep hormone, to rise in the appropriate way to help you get to sleep as well.
So I could definitely see myself picking this up and doing the breath work. It seems reasonably safe. It's a pleasant experience, and I could definitely see myself also using this in a kind of like acute situation when I need to lower my stress levels immediately. Then I guess we introduce the cold exposure. I've done the cold showers for a while, mainly as a thing to wake me up in the morning, and that saying, eat that frog, doing something unpleasant helps me basically procrastinate less through the day and actually start with the things that I really don't want to do and then enjoy the rest of the day afterwards. I've never gone any further than that, and that brings us to the third pillar of what you were describing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the third pillar, the mindset application. And you touched upon a couple of things there in terms of eating the frog, like doing the hardest thing first. The key benefits of both the cold and the breath, because they are physically demanding, for me, come down to willpower. And I view willpower as something that gets replenished every day that you have a finite amount of. And the idea of using your willpower on the things that are going to yield you most benefit up front is worth doing versus maybe expending it on the tasks that aren't. And a cold shower or an ice bath, to your point, is 100% going to yield you more extreme benefit than, say, waking up and scrolling or washing the dishes from last night. Not to say that's not important, but using the willpower, that muscle from your brain in the right way so that it gives you that benefit throughout your day. The other piece is resilience and having the ability, as you say, to go in that cold shower first thing in the morning and turn it cold and actually do it. Now, I've been doing this for 5 years straight every single day. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't get easier in the sense that your mind still says to you, hey, what the hell are you doing? Or I don't want to do this. But building that resilience so that time between that thought and the moment that you get in becomes less and less and less, translates fully into daily life. When you're then met with demanding situations, high pressure jobs, work-life imbalance, maybe a conversation that really triggered you, it builds that resilience for you to say, look, what can I start to control in my life? What can I start to control within me that will allow me to absorb the situation in the best way? Perseverance and habit creation, it usually takes anywhere between 60 to 90 days to really create a strong habit. And what I find can be troublesome with doing the breath and the cold is that you're trying to build this now into your, say, morning routine. And it's something that's quite different. So how do you stack it in there in a way that it can really benefit you and be easy? And so the breathing, what I've started to do was that I've plugged it in right before I was going to have my morning beverage or coffee and right after I'd hydrated with my water. And so I knew that once I put the kettle on and it was boiling or it was starting to boil, was a time where I could go and spend a few minutes doing my breath work. With the cold, it's a little bit harder because that is something very physically demanding and you have to usually go to a place to do that. But again, I think that positivity it creates and the can-do thinking of knowing that, you know what, this is the hardest thing I'm going to do my whole day, and everything else on that point becomes easier, can really start to create that basis of repetition and use of willpower in the right way. Last point as well, which has been huge for me, and I think for a lot of people who can really relate to this, is that we all tend to overthink. We don't spend enough time in the present moment, and we're either creating made-up stories of the future that hasn't happened, or we're reminiscing on the past and we're letting that affect us today. And I think that applies to basically everyone in the world. But the thing is, and you maybe just experienced this now when we did the breathing for a few minutes, or the only way really to get through a cold shower or an ice bath is by not overthinking it. It's by being present with your body, present with your state, present with your breath, present with your intention. And that can really start to train the mind to become more and more present and not overthink in other situations in daily life. And that's been a game changer for my productivity, for my efficiency, for also figuring out which mode I'm in terms of my present, future, and past state, and then trying to bring me back into an optimal mode of that as well. I think the benefits are huge in terms of mindful practicing of this and really approaching the cold in particular in a mindful way. The last point I'll make on this is that you see a lot of social media, people doing ice baths, jumping into cold lakes, breaking ice to get in. I'd focus on the folks who are doing it with intent, who are doing it with presence, who are doing it in a more calm, mature state, versus the folks that just jump in and try to figure it out. Because your body will ultimately figure it out, no questions asked. The body is the best tech that's ever created. I hope that doesn't annoy anyone on the call, but I believe that the body is the best tech ever created and it will figure out what to do. However, the mind can really start to control the major benefits or not that you can have in these situations. So coming into it with willpower, positive thinking, lack of overthinking, intent is the way that I really like to promote using these tools.
A quick follow-up question. Ice baths versus showers. Can you get the same benefits with just cold water, which honestly isn't that cold in the summer anyway? Or is ice bath next level because it's so much colder?
More broadly, if you're going to do any type of cold exposure, you ideally want the water temperature to be 15 degrees or lower. 15 degrees, talking from a UK perspective. That will induce the changes in the biochemistry and the physiology from a stress perspective in your immune, nervous system, and hormonal systems. Anything above that, you may as well go and enjoy a really nice hot shower. It's not going to do anything for your physiology and your biochemistry. 15 degrees, yeah, to your point, in the taps right now, we're filming this in August, it's not going to be anywhere near that. But as you get into October and November, all the way through to March, the taps will be below that for a cold shower. The next level is an ice bath, because you can appreciate the density of that water in an ice bath is more than what's going to hit you in a cold shower. And so those temperatures do have a longer lasting effect on dopamine release. So what happens when you enter 15 degree water or below is that one of the chemical responses from your body is a 250% increase in dopamine levels. That's the feel-good hormone, which is why you come away feeling refreshed, energized, charged. That dopamine release, importantly, is consistent. So there aren't really major drop-offs and fluctuations in cold exposure-induced dopamine release, because it is so pure and it's coming from the deepest glands that are basically ready to keep you alive in these stressful situations. And so your dopamine release can be very consistent throughout the day and then drop off. That's very different to the dopamine release from particular drugs, also caffeine-induced, with adrenaline levels as well that can fluctuate, and we tend to get a drop-off once we've had that caffeine and we need another one. So it's an extremely great benefit for using the cold. The ice bath, depending on the temperature and the lower you get, will start to prolong that curve of dopamine more and more throughout your day. But I'd say anywhere between 6 to 12, 6 to 14 degrees, you're going to be in a great spot in terms of really realizing all the benefits of this. The other piece is how long do you expose for? I mentioned it up front. I usually do 2 to 5 minutes a day. 2 minutes is a very bare minimum that I would always recommend doing, because 2 minutes allows your body to adjust. It allows your blood flow and circulation to do its thing. It allows your hormones to change. It allows your breathing pattern to hopefully change, for you to basically become comfortable in the cold. And that discomfort, or I should say that comfort in the discomfort, is the journey that we all want, because that can really play out well in life for us. So 2 minutes is the bare minimum, and really where you have zero side effects. And side effects that have happened for people really prolonging for extreme lengths of time, hypothermia, and after drop. And we're doing 2 to 3 minutes, those are very much minimalized in terms of the risks. The longer you go after that, becomes even more of a mindset challenge. But rest assured, your body's going to know exactly what to do to keep you alive.
What advice would you give to people who want to try it out? Should they just start with a cold shower? Should they go to one of those gyms that have ice baths? It's still summer in the UK, so the cold water is not that plentiful. What would you do?
So I think this is one of my favorites, because people may say, hey, I'm just going to wait till the water gets cold in October, November, or the new year, right? And we tend to send a lot of goals that way. We tend to think in yearly chunks and that kind of stuff. Whereas I'm a big fan of just starting now. So despite the water probably not being cold enough, the way I would start, and let's assume you guys have a nice hot shower in the morning and you really enjoy that. Continue doing that. And what I would build in is right at the end of that shower, on day one, you turn it completely cold, to the most extreme it can get, and you try and withstand that change in temperature for 10 seconds. That's it. Just counting in your mind from 0 to 10. There may be an initial shock because the water temperature will change. It might not be that extreme right now, but you'll certainly feel a little bit of a change. And just see how you go. When you come back the next day, do the exact same thing, enjoy the hot shower, turn it rapid cold right at the end before you're going to finish, and just add another 5 seconds. So you maybe get up to 15. The next day, maybe it becomes 20, 25, 30. By the end of the month, you may be at a couple of minutes quite easily, standing in that changed temperature at the end. I would start there as a basis because it allows your body to adjust itself to the fluctuations. Then as we get into the winter, when there's going to be a bit more of a difference from when you are turning it cold to that heat, again, start with the same practice. You may start with 5 seconds, then 10, then 15, and build it up. By the end of the month, you're at 2-3 minutes. And the important thing through this is that you're going to want to control the breathing. The breathing, the stress response will be shallow breathing, maybe hyperventilation a little bit when you feel that change. When we've either been squirted with cold water or we feel that change, that tends to happen. It's a bit of a shock. But if we can start to promote the deep belly breathing, which is slower, a consistent pace, what that is doing is that it's signaling to our nervous system, yes, I want to be in fight or flight state because I've got this new stressor of cold on me, but get me as quickly as you can into the rest and digest, the easy state. Blood flow is flowing where oxygen is getting into the body to allow us to adjust. And you guys will very much find that moment when you get comfortable in that cold. And that is the point where you flip-flop from the fight and flight mode to the rest and digest state. So I'd recommend building up like that. Now, I did that for a couple of years. Now I'm at a point where I just have straight cold showers. And that is a different ball game in itself. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy my hot showers. I have them at night. But I will start with a cold. But my focus is always on two things. Intention, i.e. what I want from it, and then controlling the breathing.
Tell me more how you started and how you went from, okay, this is cool, this is working for me, to I'm going to coach this to other people. I'm going to go to, where is it, somewhere in Poland to get certified to be a Wim Hof Method instructor. Tell me about that bit.
I appreciate you asking. So I mentioned it very briefly, but about 5 years back, I was hit with major heartbreak. I'd been going out with my soulmate, person who completely changed my life and basically wanted to make me a better human being, which I was feeling very blessed about. I'd moved to New York. I was deep in my investment banking career at the time. And I always knew that it probably wasn't quite me at my core, and what my core values were. It didn't always resonate with them, but it was a good job. It paid well. I had a good lifestyle. I had a bit of a tick in terms of things that I owned, where I traveled, the cars I had, etc. My partner, who had, I'd say, a more spiritual upbringing, would always say to me, hey, how do you want to actually experience life? How do you want to grow? How do you want to benefit? How do you want to contribute? How do you want to give back? Because you are bigger than your job. And for many years, it was in one ear and out the other, because I felt that my job was my status. I felt that if I had a good day at work, that meant I had a good day in life, and I'd basically become my job. And I think that maybe a few people can relate to that in terms of how much pressure we put on the outcomes of our job, maybe our societal rank, what we define as success, coming externally rather than internally. So it got to a point where basically my own personal growth had stagnated and we separated. And it was my partner's decision and choice. And she said to me, hey, I think you need to go away and work on yourself, and I need to do the same thing. Extremely heartbroken, as you can imagine. And I really needed something at that time to dig deeper. And I started yoga, I started meditation, and I felt they just weren't for me. I enjoyed the movement, I enjoyed the class, the aesthetic, but it wasn't bringing up this change or something that I was needing. And then by chance, a friend's mum directed me towards the Wim Hof Method because it had helped her deal with grief. And I guess I was going through a form of grief at the time without knowing it. And I did the breathwork that we did today. I remember it in the depths of winter in February in my flat in West London. And after the second round, I cried. I had a massive emotional release. And I hadn't cried, and I'm generalizing, as a guy, I hadn't cried for about 12 years prior to that when my granddad had passed. And obviously this was bringing up a lot of emotion in me that I'd been punching down towards the bottom of my gut. And I think a lot of people can relate to that as well. We tend to not talk about our feelings, we tend to hide them, we tend to think, let's sweep them under the carpet. The breath work is a really natural way to start unlocking that. I went through that day and I had the most incredible changing experiences of stress management. I felt like I had this. I could make the significant changes I wanted in my life. And then I went back the next day and did a cold shower. And the cold shower gave me incredible energy throughout the day, a new lust, a new zeal. That gave me this real zing of, you know what, I need to now start digging deeper in myself and finding out who I really am. And so that projected me on a 2-year deep dive, personal and professional self-development growth journey, where I started working with a coach. I started a ton of new mindfulness practices. I made new friends. I really got out of my comfort zone because the cold and the breath was teaching me that. By the end of the 2 years, I'll never forget it. It was New Year's Eve, 2021 or 22. I said to myself, tomorrow's New Year's Day. I've got New Year's resolution. I want to become a coach in the Wim Hof Method because it has literally changed my life. I got back with my partner and we actually got married literally 8 weeks ago. So it's been a beautiful 10-year journey with her. Thank you. Yeah. And so I thought, if that can happen to me, just an ordinary guy who happened to come across this, I needed to be able to teach this and spread the word. And so New Year's Day, I signed up to the training, which involved basically 2 years of biology, biochemistry, body system training, and then actually going out and experiencing deep cold exposure and breath work with Wim and all the trainers in Poland for a few weeks at a time. And yeah, really got me onto the more coaching side of things. And now I've supplemented that with my Mind Valley life coaching as well, because I feel that the mindset application of all of this is really where the magic is. The breathwork gives you it, the cold gives you it in spades, but it's then how you're using that mindset to basically neuro-linguistically recondition your life.
Wow. That is a beautiful story. And I love the stories that have a happy ending too. Before I let you go, because I don't think we're going to get a better note to end on, tell people how to find you. For anybody who might be local in the UK, how to find your coaching and your classes.
Thank you very much for asking. And I feel like those stories, I was always shy about sharing those things, but I feel that the realization I had is that everybody goes through these things in different ways, shapes, or forms. So I appreciate you asking me that. Yeah, in terms of where you can find me, so I'm based in London. The best place would be LinkedIn. You can search my name, Ravi Modha. To your point when we introduced me up front, my calling with the coaching side is really around helping corporate professionals, folks who are in various industries, really activate true potential, improve stress management, and really embrace and enhance personal and professional development. And so I run one-on-one coaching, usually in 3 or 6 month programs, where I obviously integrate a lot of breath and cold into the mindset training, into the growth mindset piece. Also run workshops in London, which are usually 2 to 5 hours, and something that you'd experienced, of course, a few months back. And then I also run retreats, which are a bit more of a deeper dive and a more of a community feel over weekends as well. And they tend to be spread out across the UK. So yeah, LinkedIn would be the best place where I put out a lot of content on breath and cold and mindset, how this can apply to our daily lives in corporate and the changes we want to make. And then, yeah, of course, seeing people in person is really where the magic happens as well.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I know I'm going to be giving more of a try. I hope that a lot of other people will too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.